Hi, Joni here. Was this Zelensky's biggest mistake? That will be the topic of today's video. Despite some missteps, Zelensky has exceeded almost every expectation, especially in 2022, leading Ukraine through chaos with courage. But wartime leadership is about timing and foresight. And some of the hardest decisions Zelensky took came too late. Before 2022, Zelensky wasn't widely trusted by Ukraine's most patriotic and nationalistic circles. He was seen as too soft on Russia. Someone who might prioritize peace and appeasement over strength and sovereignty. He was ready to negotiate with Russia and to make big concessions. That obviously didn't work. And this perception that people had of Zelensky changed drastically in 2022, especially during the first few months of the full-scale invasion. Zelensky surprised many with his resolve. He stayed in Kyiv when others fled. He asked for more weapons when others would have asked for a lift. He rallied the nation and a big part of the world. His charisma and persona really helped Ukraine. Even his critics admitted. He rose to the moment when it mattered most. He was listened to by many Western leaders, and he made sure that Ukraine would keep fighting. He marked history. But this doesn't mean that there weren't mistakes made and that they shouldn't be pointed out, especially since some of these mistakes still have an impact on the war today, and some will also have an impact on the future. We need to learn from mistakes. That's what differentiates Ukraine and the West from Russia. We are allowed to talk about mistakes and learn. But before that, a bit of background. Zelensky's recent push to reduce the independence of Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies sparked backlash. It was seen as a step backward with EU accession on the line. There may have been some reasons that we don't know about, but public pressure forced Zelensky to back down and trust took a hit. And it's good that Zelensky backed down. And this wasn't Zelensky's biggest mistake of the war, but it's indirectly linked to his biggest one, which I will talk about now. If Zelensky wanted to centralize power even more as a wartime leader and push for greater mobilization, 2022 was the right moment. Public support was very high. There was a sense of emergency. Society was ready. It's quite common to centralize power during an existential war, and many democracies around the world would do it, including my country, Finland. We would become way less democratic and way more authoritarian in case of a war. And that would be completely fine because it would only be temporary. But if you do it, you need to do it right away when the existential war starts. And that also applies to large mobilizations. Delaying mobilization made it harder for later, when many hoped they could avoid the brutality of the war. When people get used to the idea that they will avoid war and survive, it's really hard to mobilize them. And that was, in my opinion, Zelensky's biggest mistake of this war. And Ukraine is paying the consequences today and will pay the consequences in the future. Ukraine should have mobilized more and earlier. You would have less manpower issues today. And no, I'm not saying that this would have been easy to do. Mobilizing more people in 2022 would have been very tough. Ukraine had limited numbers of instructors available and urgent needs at the front. But it could have mobilized more. It could have mobilized people without directly training them and sending them to the front. It could have mobilized people and told them that they would get called up soon for training and to be sent at the front, training them over time when possible. Not everything needed to happen right away, but it would have been much easier to mobilize large numbers of people in 2023 if they had been aware that they would get mobilized already in 2022. Their attitude would have been different. Ukraine should have made sure that these people would have been ready for it. And there are other issues too. Ukraine could have worked on a better conscription system, and it could have had less ways and exceptions to avoid mobilization. Because the more exceptions exist, the less fair it seems to those who actually get mobilized. And again, I'm not saying that any of this is easy to deal with. But by 2023 and 2024, mobilization became much more complicated socially and politically. And as I've said earlier, those who had not been mobilized yet had assumed that they would never be. And now Ukraine faces manpower issues, and it is pressured by its allies to mobilize more. But it's very complicated to do now. And despite massive innovations in drones and military tech in general, manpower is still key. There are no frontline units that wouldn't benefit from having more infantry. Ukraine's ability to rotate, reinforce and train is still stretched thin. And even if these moves should have been made in 2022, it's not too late to make a difference now. And Ukraine is making efforts to improve the situation. But to make it easier for Ukraine, Europe could send instructors to Ukraine. Ukraine also needs to keep working on improving its training system and to make sure that soldiers get a longer and better training before getting sent to the front. And the corps reform should actually help with that. Ukraine could also improve its conscription system, its recruitment incentives, and its mobilization system. All of which it's already doing on paper, but it needs to do more. And Ukraine should have less exceptions for those getting mobilized. The system just needs to seem more fair. And it's like a vicious circle when it doesn't work. If you know that you won't get trained properly and that you won't get rotated, you're less motivated to join. And if soldiers would get better benefits, better training, longer training, and more rotations, more would join. None of this is easy and many of these things cost money, but it's doable. To conclude, Zelensky's early leadership was heroic, but sustaining a war effort takes foresight, not just resilience. Ukraine needs more troops, more weapons, stronger institutions, and more public trust. Not mobilizing more in 2022 was Zelensky's biggest mistake, if you ask me. What do you think about this? Should Zelensky have mobilized more in 2022? Could he have done it? Should Zelensky decrease the minimum age to get mobilized? It's at 25 now. Is there any mistake that Zelensky has done that is more important than this one? I want to hear your takes on this. Write them in the comments. No matter what, Zelensky and his team deserve respect. And before I end this video, my campaign is still running. Let's get the 7th truck fully funded. The other ones are already in Ukraine. The website of the campaign is in the description of this video. Donate if you can. Thank you. Slava Ukraini. That was it for today's video. I hope that you liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Thank you.